rebels against the established culture also rebel against the beautiful in this culture, against its all too sublimated, segregated, orderly, harmonizing forms. Their libertarian aspirations appear as a negation of traditional culture, as a methodical desublimation. Perhaps its strongest impetus comes from social groups, which thus far have remained outside the entire realm of the higher culture, outside its affirmative, sublimating, and justifying magic. Human beings who have lived in the shadow of this culture, the victims of the power structure which has been the basis of this culture. They now oppose to the quote unquote music of the spheres, which was the most sublime achievement of this culture, their own music, with all the defiance and all the hatred and the joy of rebellious victims defining their own humanity against the definitions of the masters. The black music invading the white culture is a terrifying realization of "Oh Freunde, nicht dies Tone," which means in German, "Oh friend, not these sounds." The refusal now hits the chorus, which sings "Ode to Joy," the song which is invalidated in the culture that sings it. Thomas Mann's Dr. Faustus knows it. I want to revoke the Ninth Symphony. In the subversive, dissonant crying and shouting rhythm, born in the quote-unquote dark continent and in the quote-unquote deep south of slavery and deprivation, the oppressed revoke the Ninth Symphony and give art a desublimated, sensuous form of frightening immediacy, moving, electrifying the body and the soul, materialized in the body. Black music is originally music of the oppressed, illuminating the extent to which the higher culture and its sublimations, sounds redundant, its beauty have been class-based. The affinity between black music and its avant-gardistic white development and the political rebellion against the quote-unquote affluent society bears witness to the increasing desublimation of culture. All right.
Okay. So in this, it seems like you could read this in one way where you've read the entire thing, so you can maybe fill me in on it. But is he coming from the point of view where he's saying this is actually an example of what I think should happen in order to break down some of the norms in society? He's not saying, like, he's not decrying that Ode to Joy is going away. He's just saying, like, look, this is what happens when people are questioning the established system. He's saying Ode to Joy is part of the establishment, so we kind of will, in order to have this change, we need to see, like, part of why most of society is seeing black music in this kind of sense that he's putting here is because it actually is something that is disrupting the establishment, but that's also, that disruption is something that he supports rather than he's against.
Yes, and let me differentiate here between the postmodernists and the critical theorists as well, because as we've discussed a few times, if you remember, the critical theorists being born out of Marxism are operating in a modernist framework, so they believe in objectivity, truth, and all this. Whereas the postmodernists completely threw that out. Lyotard, especially, Lyotard was critical of all meta narratives, as they call them, whether it be Christianity, Marxism itself, all this. So Lyotard was just about basically, okay, all these uphold certain meta narratives. There is no truth. We should just all sort of find our own truth in the context of our times, all this. Whereas Marcuse is saying we should sort of rebel against the current establishment and achieve liberation, which will lead us towards our ideal Marxist system. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So this is part of that.
Yeah. But notice, because remember, Marcuse gave up on sort of winning over the working class, so that's why he talked about winning over blacks, women, gays, all this.
Okay.
And he's saying we have to, like Adam Patrick said about fight on all fronts with all weapons. That's kind of what Marcuse was arguing here. Like, it's not, okay, we just have to tear down the system economically. We have to infiltrate the culture and all these other ideas. And that quote unquote black music was sort of working to do that. Like,
okay,
in this particular. Yeah.
He's trying to tell people, like, don't be shocked, or don't try to squash this. This is part of the new sensibilities, or this is part of what will lead to a new sensibility by destroying or by questioning and breaking down the old sensibilities.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the first line here says, "But today's rebels against the established culture also rebel against the beautiful in this culture, also against its all too sublimated, segregated, orderly, harmonizing forms." So yeah, I guess he's saying, like, yeah, you personally like Ode to Joy, and you should, because Ode to Joy is beautiful, but understand why some of the rebels seem to be attacking what you consider beautiful, because some of those beautiful things are sublimated. They're saying, so he's saying, and he said that maybe before, that's why he's saying, like, oh, to black people, the soul isn't Ode to Joy, isn't Beethoven, instead it's jazz. So he's saying, So maybe he was saying what I was saying, where to him he's saying like this is kind of fits the same thing that what Beethoven does to you is what jazz and these people do to it. So maybe he's actually what I was saying. Maybe I was misreading him there.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right, let me see. I'm trying to. Do you have anything else to add? I was trying to think if there was any.
I don't know, the new pose of music sphere. So yeah, this is I guess where it's going through, where he's just saying the refusal now hits the chorus of sings out joy. No, I think that's it. So yeah, maybe he was saying that, and like that's what I'm saying. Like as I've said, a lot of things in here, I rather agree with him. There's some things I don't really understand, and they put in the wrong way. And I think that's something that happens when you engage with reality. Some things you don't necessarily understand, and you can adjust and change your mind when you get new information.
My one thing, and I think I mentioned this before, but it bears worth restating, especially in this, is I do reject overall though this Marxist framework of this is high culture, this is low culture. Like Adorno, remember, wrote entire reams criticizing jazz music, and the idea that popular music is bad because it's created by the bourgeoisie to keep the lower people in line. My thing is, I don't think there should be higher or lower music because, like I said, a lot of these rappers come from poverty but end up millionaires by the ends of their life. And Danielle Ballou, who I used to work for, he talks about having prominent rappers come to Danielle and eat. And it's like these are people from poor urban areas who became millionaires and they're eating in one of the top restaurants. But would you say that's high or low culture? I don't think it should be designated one or the other. Or, our vice president saying I twerk to Cardi B. It's like, is that high or low culture now? It's like, yeah, like how do you, to me, I don't think there should be a classification either way. I get that in the 1950s, I mean, this was the 60s, but 50s especially, things were very conformist. It was, okay, this is the dominant culture, and maybe you have at the fringes other cultures, but I don't think there should be a one dominant culture. It should be people embrace what they see are good ideas, bad ideas get thrown out. It shouldn't be you have to be one or the other.
That's something that we've discussed before. Where now, when people talk about the gaps, like they talk about the floor, the floor has always been the floor. But at the same point in the past, like when it was classical music, there was no recordings of classical music. In order for you to hear classical music, you had to have the ability to access or have an entire orchestra. So that's getting the actual instruments, having the location, having the time to actually go there and sit. So how many people during that time were actually able to listen to that? But now, if you're just some quote unquote poor person not making a living wage, you can listen to a recording of Ode to Joy just in the same way as Elon Musk can, as Jeff Bezos. So they might have other things, they might have access to many more things because the ceiling has raised a lot higher. But in general, most of the people at that bottom level are as close for the basic type of things. Like a basic thing is this enjoyment of the arts. In general, your average human today in a Western world has a lot more access to the basic levels of arts and extras and things than they did in the past. Like the number of people that could actually see a Van Gogh in the past, or the equivalent of Van Gogh in the past, was only the family that owned the Van Gogh and the few people that were passing around that would go to that house. But now, if you find your way to the Met, if you just find your way to New York, you can go in there for free and see that. So, or not even just that, you can go online, you can get a print, you can see the actual thing, because yeah, it's different when you see it in person versus when you see a print, but it's access, and that's with the arts. Now, when it comes to the actual basic information of the practical things in the day-to-day life that can improve your life and make you actually be able to earn and be able to be more useful to yourself and other people around you, there's very many means to do that rather than just accessing the school. It's not simply just going to that education system that we've discussed. It used to be just pretty much a situation to meet a wife for the wealthy people and have somebody trained to take on the business that their parents were already in. So people have that false idea where it's like, no, you can come online, you can get this information, you can answer these questions. These known unknowns that I was talking about before, you're living in an unprecedented time where you can actually get those things to be known. If you have a feeling, if you think a certain way and you feel there's nobody present physically around you that is in that same kind of mindset, you can reach out online and be parts of different communities without having to physically be limited by your physical location and time and things like that. So those are the kind of things that I'm thinking are just an amazing time to be alive, where you don't have to say, I only have jazz music, but you have a situation where somebody can go in and learn and grow up in a ghetto with just jazz music, but then they grow up and they're able to understand and value and see the why Ode to Joy is in there. They don't have to have the situation where you're antagonistic. It's not one or the other. There's ways for people on both sides to understand what these different people were trying to get at with that creation. So I think that's a positive time to be alive. Yeah.
I don't know if I mentioned this before, but I used to know someone who worked at Hard Rock Cafe, and they said that was one of the things that was a big deal there, was that it was one of those places where both average people and celebrities came in and would sort of sit side by side. Like it used to be, if you had money, you ate in the nice places, you were poor, you ate in the other places, but it became much more differentiated because even people with money, they're not going to eat at Dan Yellen per se every day. It's not just the cost of money. It's sitting down for hours, eating all that food. It's like, even if you have money, you're not going to do that every day. But then it's like, if you're middle class or like, moderately well off, you do it once in a while. If you have money, you may do it once a month maybe or something, but it's like, you're still going to eat in ordinary places. So that those lines blurred a lot, which I think is a good thing in many respects.
Yeah. I think that's it for me.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening. This has been a clip from an actual longer recording that I'll try to leave a link to on the screen or somewhere around here where you're listening to this.
Clinton's. 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 Clinton's.
Peasants.
Okay. Okay.